All right, so it's been about a minute and I see that a couple more people have logged in, so we'll just get started. So once again, welcome everybody to today's power lesson. Today we're going to be going over reporting in Spectrus Processor. And so before we begin, we have a couple of introductions. So my name is Allison Yee. I'm the Customer Success Coordinator here at ACDLabs. I've been with the company for about two years and a bit. So thank you so much for joining us today. Your speaker today is Eddie Zucker. He is an application scientist here at ACDLabs, who has also been with the company for the same amount of time as I have. So thank you so much, Eddie, for agreeing to do today's power lesson for us. Now, before I hand things over to Eddie, I do have a couple of things I need to get through first. So first and foremost, we are on GoToWebinar Web. So you may notice that on either the left or the right-hand side panel, I'm not sure with the update that's recently occurred, but you should see this banner here, and you can click the questions button at any time during today's presentation, and you can type in a question. We can take these somewhere in the middle if Eddie stops and pauses, or if we can take it at the end of today's power lesson as well. And if you ask us a question, we will get back to you for sure. So don't worry. If you have any troubleshooting, any errors, you know, the webinar is pausing for you or the audio is kind of cutting in and out, I recommend logging off of the webinar and then joining with the same link. If that doesn't help, then you can just message me in the questions panel and I'll try my best to help you troubleshoot. So just so you know, this session is being recorded. It will be up on the customer portal. And so on the customer portal, you'll find how-to movies and quick start guides. So the quick start guides are documents. How-to movies are 2 to 3 minutes long and they're very short. You'll also find recorded power lessons such as this one. And if you log in the customer portal, you'll get prioritized technical support. So all you have to do is go to acdlabs.com. You'll go to the top here where it says customer portal, and you may not have noticed, but we have had an upgrade to our website and therefore an upgrade to our customer portal. So if you haven't been on in a while, I highly recommend you check that out and see what we can offer you. So if for today's power lesson, what Eddie's going to cover, you know, he's going to go over copy and pasting elements into documents. So Word, PowerPoint, how to generate standard reports, and then how we can customize reports with templates. So NMR and LCU VMS is what we're going to cover. We're also going to talk about creating or editing the report templates. Eddie will also go over adding zoomed insets, editing the reports, and saving reports in a PDF format. So I think with that out of the way, Eddie, if you're ready to go, I'll hand you over presenter mode and you can get started.
All right, so
okay, here. So I'm gonna here. So here you go.
See my screen now, Allison?
Yes, I see your PowerPoint.
Okay, that's awesome.
Perfect.
All right, so yeah, thank you again for the introduction and welcome everyone to today's power lesson. We will focus on reporting in Spectrus Processor, as Allison just said, and as some of you might know, like Spectrus Processor comes with quite a powerful reporting engine, and this can allow you to generate reports from your data analysis, of course. So I don't have many slides. Let's see if I can get rid of this window. So yeah, exactly. I don't have many slides, just two simple ones of what to expect from today's power lesson. So I will walk you through how to generate standard reports, but also how to create reports from templates. And that way you can generate nice NMR reports like that one shown here. We might have a header, a date, a structure, the spectrum, of course, and then some tables. Same for LCMS. So those are the two techniques that we're covering. If you're working with PCMS data frequently, like it's quite similar to create reports as for LCMS. So I won't even talk much more in terms of PowerPoint, but like start right away with the software demonstration. So I do have the processor open already in the background. So let me just swap the window. And Alison, can you just confirm for me that you can see the processor, please?
Yep, I can see your processor window.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I have two data sets open here. One of them is an NMR spectrum, the NMR spectrum of catechine, and the other one is an LCMS data set where I have assigned two components. So you can see at the bottom is the table of components. I have assigned the ones at retention time 11 and 14. We do have a TAC, so that's the total absorbance chromatogram. You have the TIC, the total ion chromatogram, and then the extracted ion chromatograms for these two components. Then you see the mass spectrum, right? And this data set has been fully processed, as well as the NMR spectrum of catechine in the first tab. So in order to generate reports, like we have two options. So either you select the standard report. If you create a standard report, you don't need a reporting template. You can do that straight out of the software. So all you need to do for that is locate your reporting button that's either at the top or at the bottom of your screen, depending on where you're displaying your toolbar. In my case, it's at the top. And you might want to click on the black triangle to see the reporting options, just to double check that you're actually generating your standard report. So standard ticked off here. And you can head into the report setup options, which allows you to configure the options for your standard report. I won't dwell too much on these. You can see there are a couple of different tabs here where you can configure the look of your standard report. I'll just go with the settings that I have at the moment. I'll say OK. So check the selected standard report, which I have, and now I'm going to press the reporting button, which is going to generate the report for this data set. And the ChemSketch window is going to open because the report is generated in ChemSketch, so that's the reporting editor. And the important buttons are actually the zoom buttons when you work with reports. So we can use the full page button to display the entire reporting page. You can see at the bottom that there are two pages to this report. So we're looking at page 1 out of 2. If you want to navigate to the other page, just click the button next to it. Now, what we can see in this report, we have different reporting objects. So there are the spectrum parameters at the top. Then you have your multiplied report. You can see the spectrum and you can see the structure. I want to make the spectrum a little bit bigger, so that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in a little bit as well. The report that you see and that's been generated is still flexible, so you can change the look of certain objects, and we can especially like make things bigger and smaller, so that should not be a problem. So I'll just enlarge the spectrum a little bit here. And what I want to do next is I want to create an inset. So what an inset is, it's like a zoom in of a certain region of the spectrum. And in this case, to me, like it would make sense to zoom into the aromatic region just to have a better look at these peaks here. So to do that, I'll zoom in that we can see a little bit more. I'll use the page width button, and then we can just see the whole spectrum. And you can kind of see the aromatic, but I want to have a bigger picture of that. So to do that, locate your Zoom Spectra button at the left-hand side. You can click it to activate it, and then you can simply zoom in by drawing a box around the signal that you want to be enlarged. So I'll do that here. You can see the dotted line is appearing. That shows me like how big of a region I'm picking. But I really want to focus on the aromatic region in this case. So I'll take that bit and place it somewhere in my report. And now I'll go back to my full page and change it a little bit that I can see it better. So I'll make it bigger, and you can see there's your inset. It's labeled so with the same options as the original spectrum. So you can see the scale, you can see the integrals, the labeling in terms of the multiplets. and the peak picking. You're not limited to one inset, so nothing prevents you from doing that again. So I can do that again for a signal in the aliphatic region. Let's just pick that one and place it here. And again, I'm enlarging it so that we can see what's going on. And you could put that here. Right, so that's how you can work with insets. It's a nice handy feature to just enlarge region of your spectra. All right, let me head back to the processor. I'm actually going to close this report that I've just created because I want to create another report, and this time from my LCMS dataset that I've also opened in the processor. So I'm heading back to the processor. I switch tabs and I'm going to click the reporting button. I'll just double check that I've selected standard, which I have, and press the reporting button that's generating the standard report again. Like, it should work the same way for you without having to set up a reporting template. And again, ChemSketch should open. You should see the LCMS reporting page. We are getting 4 pages. If I click that button, I can navigate to page 1 right away. You can see on the first page, I have my table of components. So that's the components that I've identified in my LCMS run. And then I can navigate to the next page, which shows the chromatograms. On the following page, I have detailed information about each of the components that I've identified, which is the UV spectrum and the mass spectrum. So the nice thing is that also the zooming function or the inset function is also available to mass spectra. So if you want to zoom into mass spectra, you can also do that. In this case, the analyst might be interested in the splitting of that peak here. So I'll just grab it and put it next to the spectrum and let me resize it. That way, a nice inset, just showing the isotopic pattern for this peak here. Now, the next part that I want to show you is how to take reporting objects and just copy them into other documents like MS Word or PowerPoint. And in this case, I'm just going to copy it into the PowerPoint that I showed you at the beginning. So all you have to do is you have to select that you would like to copy over. So I'm going to grab the mass spectrum, my inset. So I can hold the control key and just click the inset. My apologies, the shift key, I think, to select multiple ones. Yeah, that's it. So shift key and click, you can select multiple objects. And then you can press Control C, switch over to your other document, and you can insert. Control V is going to insert it. And there's my mass spectrum. If I wanted a structure, I can head back to ChemSketch, select the structure, Control C, and let's go over to the PowerPoint presentation. And in this case, what I want to do, I want to right click and insert it as a picture, because if I insert it just with the paste function, it's going to give me like the mole structure, so just the information about the coordinates. I want the picture, so I'm going to insert the picture. So this is how you can simply like transfer objects from your ChemSketch report into other applications and other documents. That's pretty straightforward, I believe. All right, I'm going to close this standard report and I'll show you how some reports would look like if you use report templates. So I'm heading back to the processor and let's start off with my key here. I do have an NMR template. So if I wanted to report by template, I can go back into the reporting options, select by template. And under the template section, you can see I don't have a template at the moment, so I have to set one. I'm clicking the set template button and it's prompting me to add a template. So I'll press add, and that's my power lesson folder here. And I'm going to select my NMR template. The template typically is an SK2 format, and we're going to get to this in just a little bit. But templates are created in ChemSketch, and that is why they have the file extension SK2. So I've mapped my template. I'm going to press OK, and it should appear in my list. So let me double check. So my template is selected, and I do have my template here. Once I press the reporting button, the report is going to be generated. And the way my template was set up, I'm getting the presentation just before. We have a header, we have the date, we have the page number. In this case, the report only contains one page. Then you have the structure, spectrum, and the multiplied report. Now, what is nice is that, as I said before, like the report is not static, right? It is still dynamic, so you can still change things around. So if you don't like the position of objects in your report or the size, you can resize pretty straightforward or just move them around. Then you can go ahead and you can insert other information. Like, for example, if you wanted to put in your lab here, you can do that. So let's go to laboratory and we'll just call that ACDLabs. And you can define a project code if you want to. Yeah, so it's dynamic, right? So you can still change things around. I also want to show you how a LCMS report would look like. So what I will do, I will close my NMR report and I'll open in Processor my LCMS set again. So let me switch tabs. So that here is my LCMS dataset. And again, I haven't set the report template yet. So let me do that. So that's my Power Lesson LCMS template. It's been mapped and I just have to change it from standard to by template, and then it's going to use that template here. So it's just taking a second or so to generate the report in ChemSketch. And again, I'm using the full page button to display the full page. You can see we are getting 3 pages of this report, and I can navigate to the first page. On my first page, I have, again, the header with the date. I have some parameters of the samples, the chromatograms, table of components. And then on the second and third page, I have detailed information about the components that I've identified. So in this case, I've identified 2 components, and these are displayed on the following pages. So we have that component here at retention time 14.1 minutes. We have a single scan spectrum. You can see it's single scan because it has only one scan number. And then on the spectrum next to it, you can see the combined spectrum, which is averaging a certain number of scans here. We also automatically generated this inset here. Right, I just want to point this out because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show how to create such a template from scratch, because that's where it becomes really interesting. And that takes a little bit of practice to know what objects you have to insert and so on. So I'm going to close the report that I've just generated, and I'm going to start creating my own template. So the template creation starts from ChemSketch. So if you want to create your own template, open ChemSketch. You will have a new, like, create a new document using this button if you're not looking at an empty document. By the way, to see the open documents, you can also use the documents button here, and you can see I've only got one document open at the moment. It's the one I'm looking at, and it's not been saved. It's just automatically renamed to no name. I'm going to go ahead and save my template so that I can map it later on. So let's save it. And I'm going to save it in my Power Lesson folder. I'm going to call my template, it's my Power Lesson Live template. Now it's been saved. You can see that at the top. So to start building the template, I have a couple of elements that I want to put in. I want to put in a header. I also want to put in like the chromatograms. I want to put in the mass spectra, and yeah, and the structures and the components that I've identified. So I'm going to build the LCMS template that generated the report that you saw just before. In order to create your header, you go to Pages and locate the header and footer section, and you press Edit. And that's going to allow you to build the header and the footer for your document. So I'm going to call this here, that's going to be my LCMS report. So LCMS report from and then I can insert the date using these buttons here. So I'm going to insert it. And I can even insert the time. Let's just do that as well. And you can see it's quite small, so I'm going to change the size here. So Arial is fine. Maybe we want 11, and I want this to be black. So the color selection is at the bottom of the screen. And I'm going to make this slightly bigger, this box that I'm looking at. So let me select it again. And I'm going to make it the size of my document. I'm adjusting both the sides of this header here. Doesn't want to let me do that. Here we go. All right, and the last thing that I want to do is I want to center this. So let me select it all, so Control A, and center this, and there's my header. One more thing, maybe I want some lines around the header, so I'll also insert these. And I'll just use the line tool. You have some shapes here. So there's lines, you have polylines, you have boxes, and so on. If you want to insert them, that's all possible. So I'm just drawing a line at the top. And by double clicking the object, I can go into the object options. I'll make the line a bit wider and say apply. Okay. And then let me move that bit up here. You can also use your arrow keys to move objects around, by the way. This is what I just did. And I'm going to copy the line and paste it in. And then that way I get a nice header. And in terms of the footer, what I want to do, I want to go back to my header and footer box, select the go to footer button, and that allows me to go to the bottom of the page. I'm just going to insert the page number for my footer. It's been inserted here. Let's make it bigger and black. And then I also want to display it on the right side and move the box over a little bit so that the number is in the right location. So that way I've created my page number at the bottom. This is quite handy for a multi-page report, obviously. All right, in terms of the header and footer, there's only one more thing to do, and that's a nice feature. So you can insert an image. So I'm going to insert the ACDLabs logo at the bottom left-hand side, and I have it here as a PNG. You can just move any PNG file into the document if you want to. All right, with this, I have my live template here with the header and footer. I'm going to save my progress. So it's worth saving every now and then to not lose any data. And then I can start putting objects into my reporting template. So if you remember, I'm reporting LC-UVMS chromatogram. So the first object that I want to display is my total absorbance chromatogram. And in order to insert objects into your reporting template, you need to locate the report template button at the left-hand side. So once you click it, the cursor will change, and then you can start drawing your report objects. So I'm going to draw my first object here. And this is going to be my absorbance chromatogram. Once you let go and draw the box, the ACD ChemSketch template window is going to open, and you have to select the template type. So we have many different template types here, referring to the different modules of ACDLabs software. What I'm doing at the moment is LC-UVMS templates. I'm just scrolling to the bottom of this list here where I have LC-UVMS. Click that button and insert the object that I want. So with this drop-down menu, one thing to keep in mind is you have your summary chromatogram, table of components, biotransformation maps. Those are objects you can insert. If you want to insert any of the objects labeled with trace, what you will need is the trace layout organizer around that object. So I'll show you how it works. So I'm going to select the trace layout organizer first to insert my absorbance chromatogram. And it's already, you can see that here in the background, it's referring to the TAC at the moment. And that's what you can change under specifics. So for now, I'm happy with TAC because that's what I want to report. And I'll say OK and OK again. And then within this organizer, I'm going to put my actual chromatogram. So that's just something to keep in mind, like use the organizer if you want to use any of the objects labeled with trace. In an analogous manner, right, you would need the organizer to use the component layout organizer to use any of the component objects. All right, there's my trace chromatogram. I'm going to put that here and say OK. And then the next step that I want to do, like I'm changing my cursor to the mouse and just say save. And go back to the processor and try out my template. Because every now and then, like the template building process is quite iterative. So that means like you will be going back and forth between processor and ChemSketch to just see if your template yields the report that you want. So I'm going to check that my absorbance chromatogram is actually displaying. I'm going back to the processor. I'm still reporting by template, that's fine. And I'm going to locate my left tab. So that's here. Say OK. Let's have a look here. So you see I have two templates now. That's the one that I chose at the beginning. And now I'm switching over to the live template and say report. And I'm expecting the report with just my absorbance chromatogram. And you can actually see that here, right? So that's good news. The report looks like I want it to look for now. It has the chromatogram. It has my header, my footer, and my logo. Those are the objects that I've defined so far. Now I'm going to continue working on the template. So I'm going to close the report that I've just generated. What I will do next, like I will add the other traces, so my total ion chromatogram and my XICs. I also will show you how to change the look of this chromatogram here. So if I want to change the peaks, for example, from blue to black, I can do that. I can insert a scale. So those are things that I'm going to do now as well. So this report here, I'm going to close and I won't save any changes to that one. I'm not done yet. And I'm back at my live reporting template. And let's first change some properties of the chromatogram that I just saw. So I'm double clicking the trace chromatogram, heading to settings. And here's where you can select what your chromatogram is going to look like. So you have 4 tabs to configure the look of your chromatogram. I'm going to say keep current horizontal zoom settings because that's a good one. Like in processor, it's just going to report what you zoom into. So it's a good handy option to keep in mind. And then I wanted to add a vertical scale. So I'm going to add my vertical scale. And my peak labels, I didn't want them blue, I want them black. So let's try and change that as well. All right, I'll press OK to save my changes and press the save button. And let's double check that the report looks like what I imagine it's going to look like. So let's press and there's my chromatogram. Right, it now has a vertical scale. Those are relative units. The labels have changed from blue to black, so that's fine. I could also have changed the area. You can see it's like orangey. I could have changed the color if I wanted to. All right, so the next step for me is to report the remaining traces. So let's close the report and continue the template. And now it gets a bit easier because I can just copy paste what I've done so far, and that's going to ensure that it looks the same as what I've seen just then. So I'll just highlight both of these objects and copy paste them. And let's put that in. Now we want 2 TAC traces. We want the TIC. So I'm going to double click the trace layout organizer. I'm going to change it to TIC, say OK and OK. And that should be fine. Now I want one more object, which is going to be my XICs. So let me grab the trace chromatogram and put that here. I'm going to double click it. And now with the XICs, where you can find them, and that's a little bit different to the other traces that I've reported just then. For the XICs, you will need the summary chromatogram. And since this is not under the trace layout organizer section, you won't need a layout organizer for that one. So I'll just click summary chromatogram and I'll specify what I want here. So I want the XIC's positive mode and unselect everything else. Say OK. And under the settings tab, I can configure what this is going to look like. So also I want a vertical scale. I do want the horizontal zoom settings kept from processor. And that's pretty much it. All right, let's press OK. OK, and save this to double check that the report is going to look like what I just set up. The backend processor, and you can really see like they're going back and forth to see what your reporting objects do. So that's the report I'm getting so far. I'm pretty happy with that, right? I have my 3 traces, the TAC, TIC, and my extracted ion chromatograms. I can see they are labeled with the masses. So one thing that I would like to display under those chromatograms is the table of components so that I can see what components I have identified in my run. So let's put that in. And again, close the report that's been generated just then and add the table of components. So the reporting template button here enables me to add more objects. So let's draw the table of components. And that is at the very top, table of components. And what I can do, I can configure it to change the look of the table of components. So for the table options, that's the columns that are shown. I can select current, which is going to take the options from the processor. It's not a bad option, so let's stay with that and see what we get. And then you have some other options here that you can configure. All right, let's save the report, back to the processor and see what we get. So we're getting the table of components, and you can see one problem that you might observe every now and then, and that is that a reporting object is too big for the page. So now you have different ways of how to fix it. You can either change the width of each column. You can unselect columns if you want to. That's another good possibility. Or you can select which columns to report specifically in the reporting options. Now, what we have done for this object here, we said like keep the options from processor. So let's go ahead and test this. Maybe to us at this stage, maybe the mass is not that important. We are okay with just the M plus adduct. Maybe we don't need the monoisotopic mass for now. Pretty small here, so maybe we can hide the structure column as well. These in the processor and see if the report is going to adapt these. So close the report, go back to the processor, and let's hide. Right-click on the table of components. I'm going to hide the structure and the monoisotopic mass. Let's have a look what my report is going to look like. So you can see that the table of components is now looking a bit slim. It doesn't have the structure anymore. It doesn't have the record. And if I wanted to, there's still some space. As I said, I can also go back to adjust the column width, another possibility. All right, but overall, I'm quite happy with how it looks now. So I will continue working on the individual components. So let me close the report and generate the second page of my reporting template. So to add a page to your reporting template, go to the top where you have all your different buttons and you can press the new page button that's going to add a page. You can see the header and the footer, they stay, and you can now continue placing objects for the second page of your report. Now I want to report on the individual components. So what I will need first is the component layout organizer. And I'm drawing the object right now. So that's my component layout organizer. That is, if you have components assigned to your LCMS run, you will need that. And if you want to report them. In terms of specifics, what you can figure here is which components you want to report for. All components from the table of components, that often makes sense if you don't have too many. If your table of components contains like 100 components, maybe you don't want to report every single one of them. And in that case, you can limit them by peak area, for example. So that would be a good way to limit your components. Or maybe you only want to report the ones that have a structure assigned, not just a molecular formula, for example. But in my case, I only found 2 components. So let's go with all components. And then one important thing is how many columns do you want to see per page? That means like I could change here. If I wanted 2 components on one page, I can create columns for that. But in my case, what I want to do, I want to report 1 component per page. So I'm going to stay with 1 column per layout organizer. So I'll say OK and OK. And you can see the settings here in the background as well. So all zoomed components placed into 1 column. All right, so let's for this component, so for the components, let's insert the spectra. So I'm going to insert spectra now. So I want to report the mass spectra for each component. So I can find them under the component layout organizer. That's my mass spectrum here. And under specifics, you can define which mass spectrum you want to report. So I'm working in positive mode. So I want to report the positive mass spectrum. If you have switching polarity in your LCMS run, you can report positive, and then you can draw a second mass spectrum and report negative. And I also want to report the raw spectrum. So the raw means the single scan spectrum. I could report the combined spectrum, which I'm actually going to add in just a second. All right, let's do raw. Say OK and OK. And I will also add the table of components at the bottom. So the table of components is good because it has the information about the retention time of a component and some other information. So let me add the table of components again. So if I place the table of components into the component layout organizer, that's going to create only 1 row with the relevant components, with the component that will be shown. You will see that in a second what I mean. I'm going to configure my table of components myself. Let's go to the table options, and I'm going to unselect all these columns here. I don't want any of these. What I will keep is the name and the molecular formula. That's something that's important to me. And also the mass difference, the M plus H, and the monoisotopic mass I'm going to keep, and the retention time. And that's all. That's all the information that I want in here. Okay, press OK. And the last thing I'm going to add next to the table of structure, we actually have some more room here. Let's draw the structure. And that's my component chemical structure. And in the settings, I can set up how the structure is going to look like. So one thing that's by default activated is atom numbers. Makes a lot of sense in NMR, not so much in LCMS. So I'm going to unselect it and I'll say OK and OK. All right, so we're expecting to see a mass spectrum, the table of components, and a structure in this report template. So let's save it and go back to the processor and test out our template. And it's just generating, it's taking a second. And it's brought me back to the ChemSketch window. So you can see now pages rather than 1. So let's go back like to the first page. That still is the same. That's what I had before. I'm happy with that. Now on the second page, we have the detailed information for the first component. So that's this structure here. There's my table of components with the information that I've selected. You can see the spectrum. That's my single scan mass spectrum, by the way. And some things that I'm just seeing that I'm not happy with is the description here. So I want to change it to reflect that this is a single scan mass spectrum. And maybe the retention time would be great so that I know which retention time this mass spectrum refers to. I also want a spectrum here, and I want to display the combined spectrum. Some space here, let's fill that and put the combined spectrum here as well. All right, I'm closing this report and let's go back. So we have my component mass spectrum is here. Double click it, go into the settings, and we're going to change the header information, how to display the retention time. So I will still select show header information. I want that. I'm going to custom and I'll configure it. I don't need the data file name, so I'll unselect it, but I will add the retention time. So I can find the retention time in the parameters. And that is retention time. If I just type it, it's going to appear here. And I want one more thing, and this is the scan number. I can also find the scan number in the parameters. So not average scans, but scan. And I'll say OK, and OK, and OK a third time. So this is my component mass spectrum with the changed header information. And I'll copy paste this across to create my combined spectrum. Right now you can see it's still in raw. So let's double click it, specify which mass spectrum I want to see. I want to see combined. Okay, it's changed to combined, and we can save this template and go back to the process and test it. All right, so this is looking quite good so far. I have the retention time here, even though it's hidden under the mass label. I have the scan number, and in my combined spectrum, I still see some things that I don't want. That's the annotations, and I can see scan, but it can't see which scans have been combined. So I have the wrong parameter here. Let me go back one more time and change that. So you can see how it's an iterative process of creating this. But it's in the end, like if you know which objects you need, it's not too bad. So here we want combine so that we can see the combined scans. Okay, and I didn't want to see the annotation labels, so I'm turning them off. All right, let's save that. Go to the processor and create the report one more. So with this, I'm fairly happy. Some things that I'm not happy with right now is the height of like here you can see there's some overlap with the retention time label. I have some things that I can change. I can change the position of the retention time label, for example. I can stop having it display retention time, which could also help. So let's just do that, and then we should be done with this report template. So one more time to the header information, and I'm going to just delete the data name. So it's not going to show retention time. It's only going to show the value, and that should solve our problem. And the same thing for the combined spectrum. All right. Save the template, and this should be the final test. So you can see with this result, like I'm fairly happy, right? Now it shows my retention time so that I can actually read it. Like it's not in the way of any spectrum labels. We have the scan number, and on the right side, we have the combined number and the retention time again. I could have pushed it to the right side of the spectrum. That would have been an alternative to ensure visibility of these labels here. Also, the table of components, So you can see that to the component eluting at 11.1 minutes. There's that one here. It's pulling it from molecular as a table of components. It's showing the formula, so you can see it has one fluorine atom. So that's that one here. So then that is the correct formula and the correct structure that's being displayed. If you go to the previous page, it's showing the same spectra format for the other component eluting at 14.1 minutes. And you can see it's referring to the mass spectra at 14.1 minutes. And on the first page, that's what we created initially as my chromatographic information. All right, so I've created my report template. I've created a report using that report template. And the last thing that I want to show you is that you can save your report. So you can either save it in ChemSketch format. So if you want to save the report that you've created, you can do that. Or you can save it as a PDF right away using the export to PDF button. So let's do that. And I'm saving it in my Power Lesson, say test report. And right away, you will get a PDF document. If you double click it, your PDF program is going to open and show your report. So with that, I'm going to head back into my PowerPoint presentation and do a quick summary. What I've shown you today is how to generate standard reports in Spectrus processor. So for standard reports, you don't need any reporting templates. You can use the inbuilt functionality. I've shown you how to add zoomed insets to your reports. So that's the enlargement of portions of your spectrum, your mass spectrum or your NMR spectrum. I covered how to copy and paste report objects into other documents, such as a PowerPoint document. Then I've generated some customized reports using my NMR template and my LCVMS template. I showed you that it's possible to edit reports after they've been generated, right? So you can move objects still around, you can insert comments and so on. That's possible after a report has been generated. I covered how to create your own reporting templates. And lastly, I've shown you that you can save any report that you've generated as a PDF. So with this, I'm going to hand back to Alison, since this concludes my short training here.
Perfect. Thank you, Eddie. If there are any questions, now would be the time to ask them. Just type that into the questions box and we can take a look at them. But if not, I'd like to thank you all for joining us here once again. We do have a couple of power lessons coming up in April and May, so be on the lookout for that. But if there are no further questions, then I'd like to thank Eddie once again for doing a fantastic presentation. I hope you've all learned something new today. But with that, I'd like to end today's session. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the next one. Take care, everyone.